Hello and welcome to the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. My name is Matt Pesaconis, your host and intrepid leader into the wild, wild west of automotive technologies. And I'm joined in studio by my friend and co-host, Mike Andreski.
Do we have a Western theme song music that we can play there? If we haven't, if you're hearing this now, that's not actually music. That's Matt's voice.
So just me making stuff up as we go.
Hi, Matt. How you doing?
Good, man. I'm glad that we could get you back in the studio because, you sound so much better.
I still have my nerdy voice, but it's
we've been
better.
We've been working on that. It's
yes,
something.
we have.
It's God bless. Oh, don't do that ever again. But yeah, so today we're actually going to be talking about some cool stuff. The episode we are talking about, we're going to be naming it, What the Truck Are You Talking About? This is a podcast specifically about all the different types of trucks in the world, pickup trucks specifically. We want to talk about the history of pickup trucks. We want to talk about where pickup trucks are going kind of into the future and where we see the technology going and kind of what we think might be a new class of pickup truck. And, we want to go through that process with you guys and just kind of lead the way a little bit. So we did some research. We actually read some books. We read some Wikipedia articles as well. So we feel like we are experts in the field.
We read more than just Wikipedia, by the way.
We did, but
we modified Wikipedia.
I remember how to read Wikipedia and do my sources.
I remember how to read.
But we are 100% now the most world-renowned and experts on pickup trucks.
According to Wikipedia.
According to my mother. But, no, we're not actually experts. But we did find some pretty interesting things that we wanted to talk about, and that'll be right after we get back from our sponsored message from Hagerty.
When we see a beautiful car pass by, we always seem to use a hand signal. The classic thumbs up, the point-and-shoot six-gun finger, the hang-loose thumb and pinky combo. If you've ever flashed one of those, now there's a car club for you. Introducing the Hagerty Drivers Club. With exclusive members-only events, insight on buying and selling, the Hagerty Magazine, and roadside service, the Hagerty Drivers Club gives you a big thumbs up. So keep flashing those fingers.
Same to you!
Just not that one. Join the Hagerty Drivers Club at Hagerty.com today.
Mike, what the truck you talking about?
Well, as everybody knows, I can never stick with just one car.
No, he really can't.
So
you mentioned it last week, actually.
I have. I've brought it up a few times, I'm sure. I know I spoke with Matt about it. But since I've been staying home with the young one, I have found YouTube, and I have found trailer videos of new trailers, bigger rigs, and things like that we like to go on. And if we were to get a bigger trailer, we need to get a bigger truck. By
trailer, he does not mean the one he lives in. He means he goes camping with a hauler trailer.
Yeah, a travel trailer.
Correct. So, yeah, and, we have, both you and I have talked about pickup trucks fondly for a while, and I like to, give you a hard time about your desire for another pickup truck, but they are valuable vehicles when used for towing, for hauling stuff in the bed. Are they the best vehicle? That's something that we can argue about, I think. But honestly, there's a lot of pros and cons to them. And I think a lot of people know of, obviously, like the F-150, the Dodge Ram, the Tundra, the Tacoma, the Sierras, the big name brand stuff. But where and why are they such a powerhouse in terms of purchasing? Like, the pickup truck is the number one purchased vehicle in the United States.
Isn't it like 1/3 of cars sold?
Yeah,
in the
1/3
US?
of cars sold in the U.S. are pickup trucks.
It's a lot of truck.
I think I read something about the Ford F-150 sells a pickup truck every like 30 to 40 seconds.
There's a pickup truck that was sold today.
Now
Yep,
a pickup truck was sold.
Hey, hold on, somebody's signing a paper for a truck, and we're good.
Yep, and now they're out the door with a new pickup truck. And I think a lot of that also has to do with, and we'll talk about this in the history of pickup trucks, but there's a couple interesting laws that actually make people want to buy more from consumers as well as companies. So, but
It's called marketing, Matt. It's called marketing.
Well, not just marketing, but laws.
I know. I was...
There's actual
the law
laws
of marketing.
We're going to talk about that, but we want to travel down historical lane, and we want to talk, where did the pickup truck come from? Because pickup trucks were not always made. Pickup trucks weren't around since the very beginning
of time.
Since the beginning of time. Yeah, the caveman first invented the wheel and then invented the pickup truck. So back in 1913. vehicles were basically sold off as chassis, rolling chassis with a drivetrain and a motor. And if you were lucky enough to be able to afford a vehicle, you would actually then take that frame to a coach builder and have a coach put on the actual car. And that was luxurious, open-air vehicle. Like, they didn't have doors. It was basically a coach, like what you would imagine a horse and buggy would draw.
That's what they were coming from. That's what they're used to,
exactly.
Horse and buggy, so make it similar.
So in 1913, a company by the name of Galleon All-Steel, the Galleon All-Steel Body Company modified a Ford Model T to incorporate a bed in the vehicle. And historically, that's one of the first air quotes, known pickup trucks. Well, in 1913, most vehicles sold were, like I said, just that drivetrain, so people could do whatever they want with it. By 1917, so about 4 years later, Ford finally kind of picked up on the idea that people were doing this. Farmers were needing vehicles that were a little bit more rugged, could haul things in the bed of a vehicle. They didn't, these were farm implements. They
Farmers,
were tools.
Transportation, hauling barrels.
Not as much transportation
Really?
as you'd think, yeah. So this was really developed out of the necessity in the farms because they did have bigger, hauling vehicles, which were a set of Clydesdales and a wagon. Right, that's what people would think of like big hauling vehicles. That's why like the Budweiser wagon, right, exists, because that's how they moved big things. Vehicles at that time didn't have nearly enough horsepower, but when you were in the farms, you could utilize, throwing a couple bales of hay, moving things around, getting out into the field, using it basically almost like a tractor. So in 1917, Ford brought out the Model TT. And this was basically a reaction to the desire for a truck-bedded Model T. Dodge eventually came out in 1924 with like a competition for that vehicle with the three-quarter-ton vehicle. So the first known words utilized, kind of like when you think of like heavy metal, the first words ever used that say pickup was by Ford on the Model T runabout with, air quotes, a pickup body, sold back in I believe it was 1920, and they sold about 34,000 of these, and they cost about $281 back in 1920.
That is quite pricey.
Yeah. So, and for all of our New Zealand and for all of our Australian friends out there, the first Ute was actually developed in 1932. So there's a couple different words used to describe pickup trucks throughout the world. We know them as pickup trucks or trucks. The Australians and some people in the South Pacific believe them as utes or utility vehicles, shortened down to utes. And the South Africans called them bakkie, B-A-K-K-I-E, or bak for short. And that is Afrikaner for bowl. So interesting words that can all mean the same thing. Pickup, ute, and bakkie. So basically,
Matt's just now discovering the wonderful world of language.
Yeah, I didn't think there's anything other than English. I can't even say English well.
It's very hard to speak.
I don't talk well. Okay. The pickup that we know and love today really kind of came out of the 1950s, where pickup trucks became more of a lifestyle vehicle. They had nicer interiors. These were basically when you could say that, like, hey, this was a good workhorse that could also take grandma to church on Sunday and then take the pigs to market on Monday. These also came about vehicles like the El Camino, the Ranchero. These were practical vehicles like cars that also had a practical bed. And then this is also when International Harvester started producing their vehicles for the more of the public, and they're the actual first manufacturer to include a vehicle with a crew cab. So that would be 4 doors and enough space for everybody, and they called it the Travelette in 1957.
That's a fancy, nice little word.
Yeah, Travelette.
I don't feel like it fits a truck, though. It doesn't.
No,
seem,
it's
like a truck nowadays. It's not as masculine or strong.
But it was a vehicle that move the family around. So
Yes.
They tried to, I think, take away, like, most of the vehicles in this category up to that time were either macho, like what was the Power Wagon, there was the Dodge, what did we see? There was the Merle, or like not the Black Magic or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I have to pull that up.
So there was a
again.
lot of really weird named trucks back then. And interestingly enough, right about this time, also the Asian markets and the European markets started producing pickup trucks for the United States and selling them off. So Mazda, Mitsubishi, Datsun all started producing their own pickup trucks here in the 1950s. So much so that Detroit actually got a little scared. So they made lobbyists create something known as the chicken tax.
I don't think they made lobbyists. I think they lobbied for.
Oh no, they made them at
They made
gunpoint.
them.
Yeah, there's documentaries about like how. No, I don't. That's all lies. But I imagine.
See where Wikipedia gets us.
I imagine somebody somewhere was like, "Listen here, you're gonna make this law called the chicken tax."
I'm sure there's a lot of money going into it as well.
Because we in Detroit want to make this. I don't know why they have a country accent, but anyways, yeah, they created something called known as the chicken tax, which basically put massive tariffs on European and Japanese derived pickup trucks. Anything with a utility bed had significant tariffs placed on them, basically immediately forcing those manufacturers out of the market. And that tax actually still exists today. So any manufacturer that brings in a pickup truck or utility vehicle from out of the United States now still has to go through those tariffs. And I think that's really crazy. Everyone should be able to make cars. Everyone should be able to sell them freely. It's a free market economy, people.
We miss a lot of good cars, and that's been happening for a while. A lot of performance cars, and I never really looked at it until we started doing this research that we were also missing out on a lot of trucks as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the Utes out in Australia and New Zealand. Like I had a 2004 Pontiac GTO. They made a pickup truck out of that thing.
It's awesome.
I don't understand why GM didn't see the writing on the wall and go, "Hey, let's bring back the El Camino." They brought back the GTO. Literally, there's a car that's already being produced. Just bring it back into the United States and say, "There's your El Camino."
Ta-da!
But because of the chicken tax, even GM themselves
couldn't
do it because it was produced in Australia. And this is also why a lot of these manufacturers started producing pickup trucks like Toyota here in the United States.
So they'd be able to sell it without paying the taxes on it.
Correct. So that, thanks government for ruining,
the lobbyists,
the automotive world with these, tax. So basically, the chicken tax was to keep all those foreign companies out. Companies like Mazda, Isuzu, and Mitsubishi had to immediately start producing relationships with American companies.
Yeah, Mazda with Ford.
Yep, Mazda with Ford, Mitsubishi with Dodge.
And I think Isuzu is part of Chevy.
It might have been. I didn't see who they aligned with, but that's a little history on the pickup and where the pickup name comes from. Obviously, it's used all around the world, and as the Ute was developed, it was that same concept. It was a farmer's wife called Ford and said, "Hey, I need a truck to take the pigs to market and me to church."
Or I'm sick and tired of riding into my husband's truck in church and getting my dress all dirty.
Yeah, they didn't want that to happen at all.
Any of their nice clothes, whatever they chose to wear. So as we move forward out of the past and a little bit more into the modern era, we have some nice trucks that have grown a lot from the times. Even when we were young, the trucks of our age have changed significantly now. There were the compact or mini trucks like the S10, Mazda B, the Ford Ranger, and the Toyota Hilux. A lot of those were significantly smaller, some 4-cylinder trucks, a lot of them are 2-wheel drive.
The manufacturers were also doing pretty cool stuff back then.
Yeah.
Like the Hilux was a convertible.
They had a convertible one. There was also Dodge had a convertible truck as well.
Right.
Which would have been neat.
And we talked about the Power Wagon and stuff. So Dodge and them, the manufacturers knew that people wanted these wicked cool, wicked fast, pickup trucks.
There was a market for everything, and we were also cheap gas, fast cars, fast trucks.
Well, the crazy thing, like you said, cheap gas and all that, is that people wanted it. People were eating pickup trucks up by the dozen, basically.
Yeah, they still are. And even another thing, too, is the S10 was actually an electric truck back in 1997 and 1998. They had
it had a full electric vehicle that was used in not necessarily the logistics and warehousing, when they were running vehicles inside. First they had, diesel powered, and that was obviously leaving a lot of harmful, noxious gases.
Anything you burn in gas
inside.
Is really harmful stuff.
So then they moved to natural gas.
Yep.
Right? And that was better, but still not great. So they actually created a fully electric pickup
I
truck
think
for
they
that.
had a hydrogen model too of the S10. I could be mistaken.
I think you are, but I don't have the internet up in front of me to check you.
Yeah, we should have done that instead of that should have been part of our research.
I know.
Next time.
So like, there's these mini trucks were both practical and useful in industry. There's a ton of cool models too with the S10. I forget what they called it, but it was like the extreme package, right?
It
had the body
had
kit,
the side step on the side step bed, so it was a little smaller. More
and then the Ranger had the Edge models.
Yeah.
I almost bought one.
And then they had a couple off-road models. I know I was looking at S10s as my first vehicle growing up. My dad had a truck. I thought trucks were cool. I still like them today.
Clearly.
And I was looking at a few S10s. I know my cousin actually had a Ford Ranger, and he pulled the engine out and put a 302 in it and made it a little bit more of a race truck.
Jeez,
So
302.
There's a lot of cool, fun little mini trucks that we've had. There's a lot of nice like horsepower designs and some unique ones as well. Actually, I'm kind of sad that a lot of these mini trucks died off around 2010, or if not
Did you know
sooner.
there was a rotary powered Mazda truck?
There was.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Why don't we have that today?
Well, the rotary in itself is pretty rare. So.
Well, that's true, but at the same time, like, we need to buy a wrecked like RX-8 and throw that rotary into like a Ford Ranger.
Why don't you just buy an RX-8 engine? Instead
That's
of
what I
buying a
mean.
wrecked RX?
Well, because you don't want to just buy an RX-8 that's actually a good car. So buy a wrecked one.
What I'm saying is those engines are not expensive. So why don't you just buy
How much is an engine? Well, that's what
We'd
I'm
have to
saying.
look at it. Anyways, as we digress. So there were a lot of cool like mini trucks, and unfortunately, roughly 2010 is when they started dying off. You know, Chevy with the S10 was 2004, Mazda with the B series trucks was 2006, and they kind of moved a little bit more to like luxury trucks or more of the full size 1500 series trucks.
Right, all
Ford
along.
F-150s.
Yeah, I mean, this is in a chronological order.
Yeah.
These are just kind of categories that we picked out of existing trucks because all along this time there was, Ram 1500s, there was Ford F-150s, Ford F-100s, like
Just this was like a segment for a few years.
So we're talking right now just about some wild and crazy segments of trucks that
more modern trucks.
Yeah. So the luxury trucks, that's an interesting thing. I mean, you still really see them today. My son's in the background.
He wants to talk about
He does
them
want
too.
to talk.
He likes trucks.
He loves cars, but he doesn't know how to say R, but he knows how to say clock without the L. So he calls everything that.
I mean, it's easier. And
he's learning. He's only like 1 year old.
We're all learning.
Give him a break.
We're all learning.
But it's interesting because like there was a big push in like the late 2000s, not late, but like early 2000s for luxury trucks. Like the Escalade had a pickup truck.
Yeah, the XLT.
I think so. The
Extra large truck.
Lincoln had a pickup truck.
It did.
Obviously these were all existing pickup trucks from GM, Ford, and Dodge that then they basically put a lot of nice interiors. I think the Lincoln actually had like wood paneling in the bed.
I believe so. I know it was really high end, and I think that was one of the more high end ones. There are a lot of high end models like the Lariats, the Platinums for like Toyotas, the Denalis, the High Countries.
Right.
So you have a lot of different high-end models of trucks too, and
They're
that's
still
a little
today,
bit
which is crazy.
Yes, they're quite expensive too.
Dude, I was looking at I think it was an F-250 Platinum, and it was over $100,000.
Yes,
and it was crew cab, like all the bells and whistles was over $100,000.
And that's going to be. I'm gonna propose that question to you later in this.
It's crazy to see like Delaware, Ohio is not like poor. Like we actually have some pretty affluent people around here, but like in Delaware proper, it's a lot more kind of rural people coming into more of a rural city. We do have farmland around here, but you see like lots of these high-end luxury trucks. I'm like, holy moly, like that's a lot of money tied up in a pickup truck.
Incentives.
And they're not even we'll talk about incentives here in a minute. We're not even talking about they haul because like they don't have the what is it, a gooseneck adapter for the middle of the bed?
Oh, so like the fifth wheel.
Yeah, the fifth wheel.
Yeah.
Like they don't have any of that. So what are they doing with it? But yeah, so luxury trucks was a big segment for a long
It
time.
still continues. So they're still a
Yeah, but I don't see it coming from the luxury brands.
No.
I guess you don't see like a Lincoln. What would we call it? The Lincoln Nemo, because they got that like nautical theme kind of going.
I think it's more of just adding the options to the current truck brand. So you
Right.
have your ideas of exactly like, hey, I'm getting a Chevy Silverado, but it's the High Country edition. It's the ones with all the bells and whistles. It's got all the fancy features in it. Instead of creating a new whole, like, this is the Escalade truck, where it doesn't have that name recognition
Right.
to the masses.
But it was so crazy to see back then, like, we had luxury, like the GM, Ford, and everything having their luxury brands try to make this. I remember my cousin had I think it was a Lincoln, or no, he had the Escalade. I was like, I would, and he was a contractor in California. I was like, I would never put anything in that bed. Like, it's way too nice. I wanted to also, we threw in here the wacky trucks.
So they're mashups. And these are interesting to me because I wanted one of these.
Maybe we should define what wacky means, because
wacky
like,
to you means whatever. So you just throw everything wacky, pretty much.
Yeah, but I mean, what we were trying to find is things. We're kind of putting this as like a miscellaneous catch-all group where we're putting in some interesting vehicles, some vehicles that a lot of people in the truck world don't believe are pickup trucks. You know, so these are interesting. Like, we could also have put like that Mazda rotary truck in here.
We could have, or the El Camino,
or the El
like
Camino.
I know it's a little
the
bit older.
Ranchero from Ford. You know,
Yep. So these are like the Avalanche and the Ridgeline, which is our two main ones. And the Avalanche being because it was more of a truck SUV. It came from the Suburban-based platform, so it was Suburban, but what they did was they cut the back off where that third potential row was,
right,
and they made a truck bed there.
And it was a smaller bed.
It was a smaller bed. It did have the option to fold down the back, so you could actually lay a full sheet of drywall in the truck,
and
without
the ceiling would retract, almost like the old Nomads.
So it could come out, so you wouldn't get your cargo wet. So that was pretty.
Well, what you were doing is, you know, you wanted that full bed, so you could go completely vertical. You could move the roof back, right? So you'd have that roof back, and you could put a full size. It would make basically that full size bed out of the 5-foot bed, which was crazy.
Yeah, it could fit full 8 feet.
Could you imagine, like, if that went broke today? If you had this vehicle, like, you could never fix it.
Well,
like, what spare parts would be around for a moving roof?
Avalanches.
Well, yeah, you're going to have to go.
Junkyards. So it would be, whenever you have a discontinued model. Obviously.
Right. And then I'm putting the Ridgeline in here because
this is a group effort.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I was going to fall on that grenade. We put the Ridgeline in here because when it came out, it was a body-on-frame, or it was a unibody truck.
It was
based off of the Odyssey.
It was the Odyssey's platform, and then what they did was basically just made a truck out of it. So they used the engine, transmission, drivetrain. A lot of these are front-wheel drive based cars with an optional all-wheel drive platform, and then the all-wheel drive platform is still front-wheel drive biased.
Right.
So a lot of people are like, oh, it's unibody. It's not. It was based off of a van. It's front-wheel drive. This is not so much a truck. I know there's a lot of...
And the suspension geometry, the unibody construction, like, and all that made it ride far better and more comfortably than a lot of trucks in that similar... Because it was in that mid-size truck category. It had like a 5 to 6 foot bed. I can't remember the exact dimensions, but it was smaller than a traditional bed.
Yeah.
You couldn't put a full-size... drywall sheet in the back, right? And that's kind of how most people think of big trucks. So a lot of people didn't think of it as a truck, and they hated it. But the other side was people who kind of wanted a pickup truck, but didn't want the stigma and the ride and the roughness of a pickup truck. They basically got a beacon, right? They like, this is the vehicle for you. Like they didn't want to throw stuff in their Odyssey or in their Pilot. They wanted the mulch and the gravel in a bed, right? And if you wanted a vehicle, a pickup truck at that time when the Ridgeline first came out with in-bed storage, nothing else existed.
So the Ridgeline, it's kind of like the compromise for it, right? So there's a lot of trucks that we have nowadays, and there's a lot of people that use these as commuter vehicles. They drive from A to B and so forth. And sometimes if I need to buy furniture or something, I have a truck for the possibilities of it. Or if I wanted to go out for a weekend and bring the dirt bikes, the Ridgeline would be able to fit like 2 dirt bikes in there. It could pull some small campers, etc. You could use it as a weekend warrior.
The towing capacity of the Ridgeline was up to 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, which is pretty close to a lot of SUVs nowadays.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like I know that like my Explorer pulls 7,500.
Yeah.
I don't know about your 4Runner.
4Runner is only 5,000 with the radius.
So like it's right there
Yep.
with a lot of other SUVs that also want to do. It's like a dual purpose, right? Everyone talks about crossovers. This is like the most crossover vehicle. Period. I mean, it is right because it's lifted slightly. It is lifted slightly over the Odyssey. It's got a truck bed. It can tow things. You can fit, like you said, 1 or 2 dirt bikes in the back with the bed down.
Yep.
So you
tailgate down.
Tailgate, yeah. Sorry. It can fit 4 people comfortably inside of it. Right. You have all the nice interior of the Odyssey. Well, it's nicer, kind of more rugged than the Odyssey, but like still, and it rides like a nice van.
Yeah. So it's not the truck that we know and think of, but it is the truck that a lot of people would use. So-
It's not the truck that they wanted,
But it's
the
the
truck
truck
that they
got.
deserved.
It's like
so
He wasn't the hero they wanted, but they got him.
Yeah.
The Ronda Ridgeline.
the Ronda original.
Ronda Ridgeline.
Ronda. Did
Ronda
we just-
Rousey apparently is going to buy this.
She's gonna just do like a choke slam or something too. Just
Ruh-roh.
every time you buy a Honda,
Ruh-roh, Raggy.
every time you buy a Ronda Ridgeline, somebody gets choke slammed every 30 seconds. We just the pump. Oh, that poor soul.
That poor
Oh man.
every time you
So-
buy a Ridgeline, Ronda Rousey gets her wings. Oh, jeez.
What are we just mashing up different?
Oh, we got to get out of here.
marketing
Get out. We're,
materials?
spir-
All right,
we're spiraling.
So that's we'll come back to these later as we talk about future trucks. A little
Yeah.
bit of foresight there. So other trucks as of recently, we have our muscle trucks and our hyper trucks.
Yeah, and I think this is, everyone thinks that this is kind of a recent development. It really wasn't. As we find out, all the domestic manufacturers have been toying with this idea for a long, long time. I mean, I'm not going to say that it really started with the Typhoon because that's a little obtuse, but I honestly think that when trucks became a powerhouse, the Typhoon was number one, like the first truck that could do it.
I think it's always, muscle car wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
One company does one thing and the other company wants to outdo it. So one company's like, you know what? I'm going to make this really like fast truck. And then we're going to be like, all right, this is the benchmark for it. And then the other company's like, crap, we needed to do this. So then they do it as well. So it's the muscle truck wars. And some person does it, another person does it. I know it started with Chevy with the 454 SS, and then it moved over to Ford with their Lightning. And then Dodge put a stamp on it.
Well, the
with
GM had the Typhoon before the Lightning, didn't they? Oh no, they did.
Well, that
Ford
was a-
did come out with the Lightning before the 2000 Lightning, right?
Yeah. Well, Chevy started with the 454 SS first. That came out prior to the Lightning, and then the Lightning, and then the Dodge SRT10 with the Viper engine, and that kind of put a stamp on. I feel like that era of those battles with the trucks.
So, according to Car and Driver, I've heard this before, so I just wanted to put it here. This is why we talk about like the Typhoon being like the first real notable
Right.
muscle truck or hyper truck. Was that back in 1991 when the GMC Cyclone came out? Sorry, it was Cyclone, not Typhoon. Typhoon was the SUV variant.
Yep.
So the Cyclone was faster in a quarter mile than the Ferrari 4 or the 348 TS.
Yeah, I think it has 0 to 60, 5.6 seconds?
Yeah. So the Cyclone did the quarter mile in 14.1 seconds, and the Ferrari did it in 14.5.
So imagine having in that time, an SUV, but then later a pickup truck that was faster than a Ferrari of the time.
Just imagine being at a light next to anything, because the Ferrari wasn't slow. It wasn't no slouch, but like at a light and just embarrassing them from one light to the next.
Out of an SUV or a truck.
That's pretty cool, right?
Yes.
And that's what we're meaning. Like that was such a muscly thing. Now that habit kind of continued, and Ford had 2 generations of the Lightning.
Yep. And then Dodge came in with the SRT10s, and
R.I.P. Paul Walker and your red Lightning from Fast and the Furious. I wanted that truck.
that's what Matt started liking trucks, was in the first Fast and the Furious movie with
Seriously,
it.
like
They're nice looking trucks. I
wanted
them
a
too.
Lightning. The side exit exhaust.
I
Like,
wanted-
that just looked dope.
I wanted the Dodge. I like the Dodge looks a little bit more. They're a little bit more rounded, and then you had the Viper engine.
I
in
mean,
there.
I ended up getting the Viper truck came out later.
truck. Yeah, several years later.
But the at the time, I wanted the Ford Lightning pickup truck. I got a Dodge Durango.
So close.
It had a 5.2 liter Magnum V8 producing only like 200 horsepower.
I mean, I wanted a truck, and I ended up getting a Plymouth Laser. So we'll just leave that there.
We all had hopes and dreams.
We all have to start
and
somewhere.
then they crashed.
And then we realized that we're just high school kids, and we have no income.
But this also includes things like the Raptor.
Yep. So that was what, early or late 2000s?
Yeah, late 2000s, I think they came out with the first V8 powered Raptor. And then they came out with, obviously, the Gen 2 Raptors recently with the twin-turbo V6.
Right. I mean, they've come through a few refreshes and stuff. We also have, like, the Hummer H1.
Yeah, we threw the Hummer H1 in here because Arnold, he
Yeah,
did
he
it.
did.
He wanted it.
He bench pressed us into having it on the list.
I mean, honestly, like, when somebody like Arnold goes, I love the military vehicle and I want it on the
I want a
street.
civilian one.
Yeah, and then they produce one.
And then
But
everybody
it
wants to
had,
buy it.
like, one of them had a bed. So it was not it was like, I think 3 feet.
Maybe we can kind of throw that in the mashup just to be a significantly better version of the Avalanches. Just, it can go anywhere and do anything instead of the Avalanche.
The Avalanche was slightly more practical.
Yes.
The Hummer was slightly more badass.
Yes. And would just, I mean, you wouldn't really get very good gas mileage. You'd be at the fuel pumps every day.
Oh, yeah, it was horrible.
Start it up.
I see a lot of guys
empty.
nowadays are putting in diesel, like the Cummins diesels into them. Way better performance out of them. So the Hummer H1 we put on there just because it was kind of like an icon, right? And they did have a truck bed. One as of recently is the G-Wagon 6x6.
Yeah, those have been around for a few years, but I love those looks of those cars. I've never seen one in person, but just looking at that just looks really cool.
I forget if I know that Post Malone has, I think, a Shelby Super Snake 6x6. And I don't know if he has a G-Wagon 6x6.
I don't know him personally, so I don't know his vehicle collection.
Well, I just know from seeing
Talking to
other.
him,
Yeah, I talk to him every once in a while. He and I go way back. No, just talking to other, seeing other people do articles on them and talking.
This
It's
is
almost like
so-and-so's.
the cribs, but it's like some people like to show off their rides.
No, and it's a very nice car to show off. They're unique where you don't have too many vehicles that have 6 wheels.
And interestingly enough, there's actually, we were talking about because we obviously now have the future trucks we want to talk about. But before we want to get there, I want to kind of go back to a topic we were talking about with purchasing and why the pickup truck is so used. It's
Why we like pickup trucks.
well, and why it's one of the what did we say? It was the third most purchased. No,
It was, all
all sales made up 1/3 of
yeah. So it's
a third of the all sales.
30% of car sales are trucks.
Is that we have, at certain periods in time, they have brought tax incentives for companies to purchase vehicles with either a bed or a storage, like a utility space that is not accessible by the cabin.
It's tax incentives.
Tax incentives.
Which
We're
then
talking,
comes into incentives to us as buyers.
so if
always
you
see
had a
the
company,
GM, you see the GM discount incentives and things like that. I'm sure they're getting.
So our government not only is keeping out other competition from this, but they're also incentivizing companies to purchase these.
Yep.
No wonder they're sold so much.
Well, that and there's a lot of other things too. You see a truck. It's kind of like a status symbol. Cars are.
Is it?
Yeah, cars are status symbols to some people. I want something that's big, grandeur, etc. I want something that I can be seen in.
Oh, you know what we didn't really talk about in
You didn't let me finish what I was talking about, though. You just interrupting cow.
Interrupting cow.
Matt's not a cow. It's just there's a knock joke that I tell my 6-year-old. It's knock knock. Who's there? Cow.
I got cow who. Interrupting cow. Got it. Yep.
So yeah, they're a status symbol. You sit up high. You're big. You can see stuff. You can be seen. And then they're also versatile too. They're not the best in fuel economy, and I think we saw a little bit of a movement whenever gas hit $4 a gallon, where we're getting rid of a lot of our trucks and kind of going to compact cars. But then as it shifted again, we have cheap gas now.
Do you remember when they made the hybrid pickup trucks? GM made the hybrid Denali's. They were horrible.
Oh well, they have they still have the cylinder deactivation and stuff too now.
But they also had it. Well, they do now. But this
Yeah.
was they actually invented like a heavier pickup truck with a hybrid system that got like 4 or 5 miles per gallon more or something like
yeah,
that.
so instead of 10, they got 14.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're still seeing cost savings with that. But yeah, so one of the things is trucks can be useful. I mean, I don't need a truck, but I want a truck because there's stuff that I would like to do with it. I mean, I do have a 4Runner and is very capable of going to like the hardware store and picking up some sheets of wood or something. I have the ability to put it in there. But at the same time, if I want to do something around the house, I don't want to put mulch in the back of the truck because then I'm going to have to clean it out. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, and we've definitely, when you had your Colorado...
Oh, it was used.
I wanted to go back to talking about the muscle hyper trucks because there's also that section of like, the reason I put hyper trucks in here is not because of speed, but for like off-road prowess,
Yep.
right? You do have the Raptor, which is, known for speed and Baja
And the
inspired.
TRX.
And the TRX is new, right? And it's, already there's, I think, who was it? Hennessy made the Mammoth, 1,000 horsepower. I think they were using the Elephant engine
Jeez.
in the pickup truck. Like, yeah, that's just a stupid fast pickup truck. But we also have to include things like the TRD Pro line of vehicles, the Tacoma TRD Pro, the Tundra TRD Pro,
ZR2 for Chevy.
the ZR2, the Bison,
Yep.
the Ford Raptor Ranger out in New Zealand.
Everybody
Shout
but
out
us.
to our New Zealand and European
Listeners.
counterparts and listeners. You guys get a pretty sick truck.
There's a lot of trucks that are...
We're getting a variant of that truck called the Tremor, and it's basically an option package. It's not the same, but
No.
they did put some nice things on it.
We feel bad for Americans. Here you go. Here's
Now-
an option you can select.
Well, and for everyone who hates on Honda for bringing the Ridgeline, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the future trucks, is that Ford's bringing a unibody truck.
Yeah, a Honda actually has a off-road Model 2. I think it's like HPE or something. I forget exactly there, so don't quote me on that. I'm horrible with,
Acronyms.
yeah, and speaking in general.
Oh, yeah, that brings up another one. All the Holdens and the powerful Ford Utes
Yeah.
out there, like the HSV, what did they call it? It was the Pursuit vehicle, like PSV or PVS or something like that. Basically, 600 horsepower LS1 powered Utes, or actually that would have been an LS7 at the time, but like amazingly powerful car truck combo things. Just they look amazing.
Yes.
They have one called the Brabus, and it just looks super sick. Like I want that.
There's so many...
25 years from now.
That chicken tax. There's so many cars out there that would be amazing to have.
Think about it. We could have had that here, called it the El Camino SS.
We're going to have to do a podcast about the chicken tax.
Probably. I mean, and just talk about all the really awesome cars and trucks that we don't get because of this stupid tax.
They're just the cars that we don't get.
Well, it doesn't impact things like the Skyliner. Or anything
Right,
like
I know,
that.
but I was saying we could broaden it.
But
anyways,
we wanted to make sure we'd mention those two because they have off-road prowess, right?
Yeah.
And we'll be bringing things like the new Bronco is going to be a body-on-frame truck,
the Bronco, we have the Jeep Gladiator,
right? Oh,
which is a
shoot,
truck.
we forgot about the Gladiator.
Yeah. So by Chrysler, so that's
Which is, or at least to my last knowing at the beginning of 2020, was the most, or had the most payload and the most towing capacity of any midsize truck.
yes, it
And
does.
also was the only midsize truck from the manufacturer that included a front and rear locking differential.
It's the most off-road worthy midsize truck for sure.
It also had the most recalls of any new truck. So
We will not get into that.
tit for tat here, we'll give them a little.
It's a new model, so there's a lot of stuff that they're fixing.
But what I wanted to,
What we wanted to.
what I wanted to talk about those vehicles and bring them up because they also had utility. We definitely utilized your truck when you had your ZR1,
Z71.
Z71.
It was a Chevy Colorado with a Z71 package.
So it was
the
lifted a little bit.
It was the off-road package. We put a leveling kit on it just to give it a little bit more lift. Took the front dam off of it. Matt broke the sway bar bolt.
I dislocate or disconnected your front sway bar to make it more off road.
Yes, and we could not reconnect it.
but
because the bolt was left into the frame because it was so rusted and it was only 2 years old.
I asked a couple mechanics about that, and they said I broke a bolt on my buddy's Colorado, and they asked, it was like, was it the front sway bar bolts?
Yes.
The sway bar end links. And I was like, yes. I was like, how'd you know? And they're like, they break.
Happens
Everybody
all the
breaks
time.
them.
Yep.
Yeah, they just
Yep.
break, and you can't get the apparently the screws, those bolts. So you have to rethread it to a new bolt.
Yeah, I mean, I could try. We tried to. Do that. Anyways,
No, we tried to drill it out, and we did it wrong.
this is, well, it
You're
broke
supposed
the
to
extractor.
you're supposed to take the extractor and hit it with a hammer into the screw first, and then once it's in, then you try to drill it.
We no longer have this truck. Somebody else has a
Somebody got it.
high quality 2016 Chevy
They're going to find out,
Colorado.
why does that front wheel drop and the other wheel lift?
This is great for off road, but whenever I go around a corner, it's so wallowy.
But yeah, I mean, that brings us to our future trucks, man.
Yeah,
So one of these is like the electric Hummer. It does have a bed.
yeah.
It's a truck.
There's a lot of electric trucks that are coming out in
It's a
general.
body on frame too.
Yes, I think a lot from what I was my brief research. I was trying to do a little bit more on the future ones, and I know some of the startup companies, Riviana. I never say that one right. That new Rivian.
Rivian.
I'm not.
Yes, it's an
I'm
electric
not
car
good-
startup.
Yeah,
that they're
so it's an
going to
electric
be-
truck. It's going to be one of the ones
The
that they-
Cybertruck?
There's also the Cybertruck. So a lot of them are like bigger trucks, and then they look to be like they're going to be body on frame for the battery.
You can
ones for now.
escalate this too into semis. I mean, obviously that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about pickup trucks
Yep.
today. But like semi trucks have been looking into electric technology. We're seeing more and more hybrid technologies.
We are.
We're seeing more and more hydrogen fuel cell technologies coming around.
We're also seeing more diesels in the midsize or the.
You just
full-side
mentioned this,
pickup.
yeah.
So with I think all the big three with Chevy, Chrysler, and Ford all have a 6-cylinder diesel engine, whether it be a straight six or a V6.
What about all the diesels in the midsize trucks too? Like they became more popular.
Yeah, well, so all three of them have in the full size. In the midsize, I know Chevy has one. I have to do a little bit more research on the midsize if Ford's going to bring a diesel over.
They said they were.
They say that, and then it depends. There's a lot of what that goes with diesel. There's a lot of hesitation when it comes to diesels with Americans because of the early diesels. So with that said, there's not as many, like they say, hey, we're going to bring it out. I think they look for the excitement on it, like, hey, when's this coming out, when's this coming out?
Right.
And then if they can pass the emissions, I think that's the other standard too.
I mean, the same thing could be said with turbos.
Yeah.
And lower displacement engines. You know, when Ford brought out the Ranger with the 4-cylinder turbo, people were like, that's never going to be good. Like, you're going to have, you know, a weird turbo spool and lag and everything. And it turns out it had way more torque than anything else in the midsize category.
Well, you can get a full size truck. The Silverados have a 2.7 liter turboed engine, and that can still haul. I think around 7,000 pounds. With a
What else are you going to tow? You know,
That's
but
what-
I mean, you
yeah.
could go up to a bigger unit of a pickup truck, like a 2500 or something like that.
Right.
And you were just telling me about Chevy's bringing out a new straight six diesel.
that's already out right now. It's the straight six diesel. It's in the GMCs and then also
Sierras
the Chevy,
and the-
Sierras and the 1500s. So yeah, it's a straight six diesel, and honestly, on the highway, just cruising speed,
so it'd be the GMC Sierra, right, and the Chevy
1500.
Silverado.
Yeah, Silverado 1500. I just call it Chevy 1500.
Whenever you say 1500, I think of Dodges.
I think of Chevys. Weirdly enough.
Weird.
Yeah, we're just two different people. But yeah, they have a diesel that's out, and you can get 30 miles per gallon, if not more, on the highway driving, which is like amazing for a full size truck that you can still haul, and you can, I think, 9,000 pounds. You got a lot of payload in the back of it.
9,000 pounds. Jeez,
Yeah,
that's
a lot of me's. That's a little bit more than a ton.
I literally face palmed everybody. I'm so sorry. I had to face palm. I don't know if the microphone cut it up.
I mean, a ton's 2,000 pounds, so it's just it's simple math.
Now, you brought this up too, is that if all these trucks move to a electric powertrain, whether it be powered by a hydrogen engine or a hydrogen generator, or whether it be electric, like they're probably not going to have any manual trucks anymore.
There's not that many manual trucks in general. I know Toyota has some of their Tacomas you can get a manual in. I don't believe there's too many other manuals out there. A lot of them are 8-speed, 10 speeds, just to help with either towing ratios. They can get more gears in it so you can tow a little bit more, or they get the better mileage on the freeways. But I know that the TRD Pros and so forth have a little bit of a manual selection. But outside of that, yeah, wherever we get to more of these electric-powered vehicles, we're not really going to see any manual transmissions because it all just goes off of the RPMs of the engine.
You'll probably see more automatics in those situations,
Sure.
you know. But I forget who it was. I think it was Toyota was showing off their hydrogen fuel cell technology with electric motors.
Toyota's pushing hydrogen a lot more than a lot of the other companies are.
Well, I think Toyota has, Honda has, because California has a lot of these hydrogen fuel cell vehicles as test beds, and I think that's an interesting approach to solving the fuel to electric, right? Because you could have a hydrogen generator that only produces as a emission water,
Right.
and then it can produce all of the electricity that you need to run your electric motors. And then if you need to recharge, you pull into a station, you pressurize the system, and then you fill up. It takes 10, 15 minutes.
Keep driving.
Right?
Whenever you get home, you can plug it in, charge the batteries up.
So, I think that's really going to be the future, is that hybridization of the electric system and the hybrid system, or the hydrogen hybrid system.
And I think the big thing that we haven't spoken on yet is just the changes that this is going to bring into the truck industry, or the pickup trucks, is you're going to have so much more readily available torque. And that's going to increase your towing capacities, what you're going to be hauling, potentially your payloads depending on suspensions that we have. But you're going to be able to do a lot more with trucks. You're not going to be able to roll coal on somebody or anything like that. You're not going to have that big, thunderous,
I would love to
V8.
see a Hummer, the new Hummer truck, the electric Hummer truck with 1,000 horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, or whatever they said, and one of these roll coal diesel trucks do a drag race with actually dragging something, and see who's actually quicker.
Somebody pulling 10,000 pounds.
Like both pulling their max capacity or whatever,
Like
and
maybe a
like,
ton. I have to. I'm sorry.
whatever their towing capacity is. I don't know what you.
Well, it would have to make it even, so then you
a
can
ton
have
of weight.
Yeah, so just you have a standard weight on it and see what they can do.
So max out the Hummer and then give the pickup truck the same load. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the instant torque and response of that all-wheel drive system in the Hummer is going to be such a powerful force when it comes to towing.
I'm excited to see a lot of these
Like,
electric trucks come
Just
out.
watching like Toyota's work with that, where they had a hydrogen fuel cell and electric motors, and they were both pulling like 20,000 pounds.
Yep.
And the diesel truck, the turbo diesel with 10,000 horsepower or whatever, took the quarter mile in, I think it was like a minute and a half, and the Toyota truck did it in like 35 seconds.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like, you will never get stuck behind a slow-moving SUV or pickup truck hauling stuff. They will just haul ass and their stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, you even get semi-trucks whenever we scale this up, is you get onto an on-ramp and the traffic is going 75, 80 miles an hour, and this truck's going 40 because it's got a full load and it can't go any faster than that. You put an electric engine in there with all that power, that instant torque, you don't have to go through those gears and shift. It's always constantly there. You're going to be able to get those things up to speed significantly faster.
And that's going to be safer for not pedestrians. It's going to be
Yeah.
safer for
Pedestrians watching this
traffic.
happen.
Yeah, it's going to be safer for traffic. You're not going to hold up traffic as much. You're going to be able to merge into traffic more safely and more efficiently, right? So it's going to make better sense for everybody.
I mean, it's going to sound like we're in a bunch of Star Wars movies, but outside of that, I'm excited to see what's going
Could
to
you
happen.
imagine if they sounded like TIE fighters, just that screech? That's not what TIE... No, it's not. I mean, I'm glad that you're trying to save us from copyright.
That, and I didn't want to screech in everybody's ears. So they're just, ah!
I will insert the TIE fighter noise here.
Did you do it?
I did. It's done. It's done in post.
So then we have the electric features of trucks, right?
What about unibody?
Yeah. So I know Hyundai is coming. Hyundai's coming out with a Santa Cruz, which is going to be basically, I think,
Not
it's
to be mistaken for the Santa Fe.
It's the Tucson. What? There's one of their SUVs that they're basically doing is as similar as the Honda Ridgeline, where they're taking a mid-size SUV and making it into a truck. So it's got a 4-foot bed in the back. It's going to be very similar to the Ridgeline outside of it being a Hyundai compared to Honda. it's going to be front-wheel drive bias, all-wheel drive options, again, front-wheel drive bias. And it's just going to be another one of those, like, the market's expanding into, like, a potential unibody weekend fun truck.
Well, I wonder if, like, because obviously Honda is doing that right now, and people give them a bad rap for the Ridgeline. And by people, I mean, you know, the diehard truck community,
Right.
the people who are rolling coal. For everyone else, like, people love the way that thing rides. They love the accessibility. They love the ruggedness of the bed, even though they're not going off-roading. And
The
they
versatility of it.
theoretically could. I think it was TFL was doing a lot of truck reviews, and they tried to take one up one of their, you know, trails, and it got stuck halfway up.
Like, that's Moab, though. It's not something that we would do. If you're going extreme off-roading, which is a lot of what TFL does, is they're like, all right, we can take, like, TRD Pros, we can take,
Right.
you know, high-end ZR2s off-road, and, you know, the Raptor, etc. They're capable. That's what they're designed to make. This is designed to go off-road, but not to, like, the extremes of it.
But they were testing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
They
they say it can go off-road.
do?
Yeah. So they wanted to take it to its limit.
No.
Take it to the limit.
You gotta know the limits of a vehicle before you just like, I'm gonna drive through these woods.
And luckily, they could use the press vehicle, so it wasn't like they were wrecking a big, expensive Ridgeline. But Ford's now bringing one out with the Maverick,
Ford
right?
Maverick. It's going to be a unibody truck. It's going to be a smaller. It's going to be like more of a compact truck that they're bringing out.
Okay.
There was leaked images of it that Ford got very upset about. So we don't know a ton about it yet still, but it is coming. It's going to be more of a compact, which I'm excited about, honestly. I think there's a market for compact trucks in the States still.
Well, they're more fuel efficient, you know. And if you live in the city but also like to do some rugged stuff, like go kayaking or
in the suburbs.
bicycling, well, in the suburbs too. But I'm just saying, like, if you're in the city and you want a pickup truck, but you don't want a mid-size or a full-size, maybe these compact or like more, you know, car-like pickup trucks with air quotations fit your style and your parking space better, right? Think about that. Like, how many times
maneuverabilities.
have you gone into a parking garage with your big SUV and gone, I don't know if I'm going to fit?
I'm gonna have to do like this 9-point turn just to get around this.
Bet the Honda Ridgeline fits just fine.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want us
easier.
to be, like, I'm not an apologist for the Ridgeline, but I do think us as car people need to back off a little bit and say, hey, if somebody wants to get involved and have a air quotes truck, let them use the vehicle that they want. Maybe
we're
if they
not
got
we're not defending it, but we're not attacking it. It's
it's fine.
At the beginning of this, I know we were talking about like cars and trucks where they came from, and as I talk to my son too, is he's still learning about vehicles and he asks a lot about them, and I'm always like, there's a purpose for each car, and I'm like, my car is not fast. I got a Toyota Corolla hatchback, like it's not fast, but
I'm going to find a vehicle that has no purpose.
it's got some sort
The
of purpose.
Wienermobile.
It's advertising.
Okay.
Boom. But it has a purpose of
You
getting
did
better.
boom me?
I did. I boom mic'd you because my name's Mike. It has a purpose of getting better fuel economy. And then I talked to him. I'm like, well, you know, my wife's 4Runner, that's more for off-road, so it doesn't get as good of gas mileage. It sits up higher. You can do different things with it. It can pull our trailer and stuff. I'm like, there's different things serve
You
different
can
purposes.
shoot video out the
So
back.
you can, so the window goes down without any damaging to it. So
I said that one time around Keely, his wife, and she was like, "Why would you shoot out of it?" Because I
No.
said you could shoot out the back, like in just passing about, like talking about producing video content or
yeah, like YouTube videos.
yeah.
or something,
And she's like, "Why would you shoot out the back?" And then we just started laughing. I was like, "I don't mean firearms. I meant cameras. I'm so sorry."
Yeah, so they have every vehicle has their purpose, and I think that's where we're kind of talking about the new Hyundai and also the Ridgeline. It has its purpose. It's not the typical truck that we're accustomed to, but I think it's a truck that fits majority of people's needs.
Right.
Like
It's
I didn't.
not the truck they needed.
It's the
It's
Ronda.
the one they
It's
deserve.
the Ronda they need.
It's the Ronda they need.
one that they got.
So, I mean, that brings us to our final point, which is, does this mean that all these future trucks are making a new classification of pickup truck?
So I think the standard definition, I know we talked about this a little off air, the standard definition of a truck is it has four wheels basically, and it has a bed where you can put stuff in it. With that being said, the standard classification of a truck, I would still say stands. I don't really foresee that changing as unibodies, as electrification, hydrogen, etc., whatever the propulsion unit is going to be, jet engines, etc. I think we're always going to have a truck as the category. It's got a cab, it can hold people, and it can it can put something in the bed of it.
I think you're right. I don't think that these technologies are going to monumentally change the categorization of these trucks, because you're not going to be like, oh, eco trucks, when the Hummer pickup truck has more horsepower and more torque than a lot of these pickup trucks, right? You can't call that, it is eco, right, because it's electric, but at the same time, it's a rough and tough off-roading vehicle that has crab walk, right? So, like, I don't think it's good to call them eco. Maybe we're coming up with, like, the compact truck, or like the daily truck with all these unibody designs coming out. But a truck is a truck. And if you're utilizing, like we said, it's got a bed, it's got 4 wheels, it doesn't have to have body on frame, even though that's what everybody would like to say. The Utes of old, they weren't body on frame. The Utes right now in Australia and New Zealand and all around that part of the world aren't body on frame. Some of them are. Some of them are, unibody, high performance vehicles, right, that could do smoke and burnouts for a quarter mile. So I think that we are in a new era of trucks. I do think we're on the precipice of a new era of trucks with the hydrogen cells, electrification, the unibody making it easier and more safe. We just watched a bunch of crash videos of pickup trucks, and the ones that fared the best were the ones that were unibody or had a motor in the way. Right, because like that small overlap crash test basically just crumpled everything and didn't hit any of the crash stuff, didn't hit the engine, so it just immediately hit like the firewall. Don't watch those videos if you want to buy a truck.
They're tests, and they're putting them in the worst possible scenario for that vehicle. They're not head-on collisions; they're just at the
small overlap. Yeah,
like the left or right.
Basically, like just past the headlight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, that's a frequently caused accident, whether you're avoiding an animal, whether somebody swerves out of their lane into your lane. Like, it's a valuable test. That's why they do it.
For sure.
So, guys, this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. What the truck are you talking about episode? We're so glad you could join us and talk with us and reach out to us on our comment section in our Facebook. We do have a YouTube channel. It's mostly just our repository of recordings, so check us out there. We do have some smatterings of video content there, and we'll put some more out here sooner than later. But thanks so much for joining us on this trip down the historical pickup truck lane. Maybe one of these days Mike will have a pickup truck. It's
going to happen.
I'm expecting any day now, like next week, he'll come by and he'll be like, I got rid of the Corolla and I got a Tacoma or a Tundra
or something.
So thank you again for joining us. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep trucking. Driving.